Yo, what's going on, everybody? I'm waiting on Ron at this point in time. He'll be here shortly, but welcome into another edition of our Election 2020 mini series brought to you by Don't Call This a Podcast, kidswearcrowns.com. I am your host, Ryan McLaughlin, and as I mentioned before, Ron is going to join me here shortly. Later on in today's episode, we're actually going to be joined by Terrien Long of City2City, which is an action-inspiring organization that you can learn more about how to participate in by going to their Facebook page. We'll talk a little bit about that as time goes on. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit about what's been happening. A lot of unrest going on over the last 8 days as protest for George Floyd continues. We have now officially had all 50 states account for some form of protest in hundreds of cities across the country. I think something that's really been interesting to me is, of course, we had them here in Atlanta, but you had protests going on as well in Gwinnett County, different parts of DeKalb, Cobb. So, even in Birmingham, you had them out in Hoover and Homewood. So even though, a lot of times we kind of lump the city into the city itself, it's important to note how far these are expanding. As of today, there are new updates that George Floyd's murderer has had his charges upgraded from a third-degree murder to a second-degree murder. On top of that, the other 3 officers that were involved have now been charged as well. So a lot of positive news, but we got to keep the pressure. We got to keep doing what we're doing. I've never been more proud of anything, of seeing how people are finally fed up, and people are finally realizing how fed up they are. You've got people that are trying to downplay it by talking about the looting or whatever they want to say. The important thing is, of course, property can be replaced, and life cannot. But it's how do you react to the property being damaged versus the life that was taken. And so anything outside of a compassionate statement, outside of an "I hear you and I'm going to listen," anything that comes with a but or any kind of something that doesn't indicate that you're listening, then people don't want to hear it. And that's what it boils down to. As I've mentioned, and I'll mention it before, I am proud of what's been going on and how loud people have been. And I think they should continue to keep the pressure up, because Breonna Taylor's murderers have not been charged. Nothing has happened with them. They've been excused. So, again, we need to keep these things going. If these officers are not convicted, you can only imagine what's going to happen. So, again, the pressure has to stay on. I know these curfews are out here now, which, funny enough, these curfews didn't take place during COVID. But, COVID's still going, but these curfews didn't take place during, when we were all quarantining and shutting down and trying to social distance. So it's real weird to me how all of a sudden we can implement 8, 9, 7 o'clock curfews and things of that nature. With that being said, I don't know if you all heard or saw the videos that were shared from the Los Angeles police chief Zoom. There was some kind of Zoom meeting they had where the public was asked to chime in. And I guess they thought that they were going to get some kind of, I don't know, they thought they were going to get some kind of compassionate statements and people in their corner and rooting for them. And they just got lit up. It is something to see. I retweeted it 1,000 times on my Twitter page. Make sure you go check it out. But it's a sight to behold. These people brought statistics to the table, they brought data to the table, and they called over and over again for these people to resign, which is what should happen. It's just interesting to me that, we're at this point, we've reached this point in time where, we've been saying these things for years now, right? We've been talking about how, police have been abusing their privileges, how they have been, murdering Black people. All these different things that we have been saying for quite some time, and we just have not been heard. And now they're finally starting to listen to what we're saying, and I hope that it is the process of real change. So coming up on the rest of this episode, we're going to talk a little bit more. I'm waiting on Ron to get here. I'm not going to put a banner here in a second, but we're going to talk a little bit more about these protests and what it kind of means for the future of the country. We're going to talk about Joe Biden tackling Julian Castro as part of his task force, or to lead his task force on police and criminal justice reform. I think we are taking the right necessary steps, but we have to keep going in the direction we're going, and we have to keep applying pressure. So we're going to take a little quick break. And when we come back, Ron and I will get to going on the topic at hand and the show at hand. So All right. I think Ron is about to hop on. Thank you all for being patient. If you're listening to this in the audio, then you probably just heard a quick little time skip there. But thank you for tuning into today's edition of Election 2020. As I mentioned before, there's a lot on the docket here that we are getting ready to cover. I do want to invite some good. Never mind. Hold on. Thanks for joining. Hang on 1 second. I'm getting Ron situated. We're going to get rolling here. Thank y'all for being patient with us. I appreciate it. All right, I'm getting rolling without Ron. We got a guest coming here in just a little bit. I do want to again thank everybody for tuning in and listening. Don't want to hold y'all up too long. So I do want to start with the news that came out today about Julian Castro being tapped by Joe Biden to be the lead on police reform for his campaign. This is a really big deal. If any of you were following the primary pretty closely, you'll see how basically Julian Castro was the person to start putting out police reform policy before anybody else and long before anybody else. I think this is a fantastic move for Biden. Castro has called for demilitarization of the police force, including cutting off any further transition of firearms to police departments. We have, he's got a history of police reform or police reform in action in San Antonio when he was the mayor. And he's always been a pretty progressive candidate. He and Elizabeth Warren, he was probably similar to Elizabeth Warren ideologically, and a little close to Bernie's camp too. And so this is a really good pick, I think, for one, choosing a person of color, but choosing somebody who has been incredibly vocal about this very thing, who has some name recognition and name ID. I think that is going to get a lot of people to pay attention. I think it's going to get a lot of people to notice, and we need to show people that this is a thing that is happening, that this is something that's gaining steam. I do want to read off a few of those proposals that Castro had put forward, which includes, but is not limited to, nationwide accountability, increasing the standards in terms of, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble here. Give me 1 second. Castro has a history of putting forth ambitious plans. And really, to me, a lot of what he had put out there wasn't as strong as it could be. And it was still extremely strong. Don't get me wrong. He has called for an entire overhaul. He was on stages pretty much naming all of the victims, or a lot of the victims, over the last few years. But he wants to go to what he calls a people first policing plan. And so there's a couple stages to it. One is to end over aggressive and biased policing. 2 is holding officers accountable for misconduct. 3 is mending relationships between police departments and the communities they serve. While I agree with that to an extent, I actually think that we should go steps further. For one, the state of Minnesota announced that they are launching an investigation into the city of Minneapolis Police Department in terms of civil rights violations. I think that's something that should be conducted nationwide. Every single police department, regardless of size, should be looked into for civil rights violations. If they've had more than, you can set a number, 1, 2, or 3. If they've had more than 3 within the last 2, 3 years or 5 years, or whatever you want to set the timeline at, if they've had more in that point in time, not only do they receive defunding, but those people who are in charge, if they were in charge at the time of those violations, are removed. I think you support municipalities and states in terms of defunding, because the federal government can't make a state defund a police department, but I think you can give incentives to states to defund their police precincts that taking money out of their hands or out of their pockets, and give some kind of incentive federally for the states to do so. I don't know what that can look like yet. That's something that I would just spitball. Somebody who's more creative on policy than me could put that forward. But I really think that is the way to go about things, honestly and truly. I also believe that we should be looking at complete reform and training, right? In terms of, let's say, I don't want to say like empathy training, even though that's kind of what it should be. But honestly, when you're talking about police officers should live in the community they serve, right? There's no reason to use an Atlanta reference. You should live in Snellville and be part of the APD. I'm sorry, it just shouldn't be the case. And I understand that some cities have a higher cost of living. Well, then we ensure that, whether it's through state funding or whatever, that job still plays enough to live in that city. And that also ties into other kinds of reform, like rent control and stuff like that. But we're getting on a different subject here. But you should not be working for the Snellville PD if you live in Peachtree City. You shouldn't be working for Hoover or for Birmingham living in Hoover. All of those things, I think, play a major role, and you should be required to be part of that community in that precinct. Birmingham PD, of course, has different precincts, and if you're stationed at a certain precinct, you should live in the zip code that those precincts served. If that's over in on the north side of Birmingham, okay, that's where you live. If that's over on the west side, okay, that's where you live. If you're living, all those kind of things, like that should be part of it. If you're servicing UAB in the south side area, you should be living over there. You should be in those zip codes. That should be required. So to me, I think it's common sense. I think it's something that we should have moved to a long time ago. And I think when you do that and combine it with requiring those police officers to know the community, and that means not just I think it helps to be required to like referee youth games and high school games, but I also think it requires you doing soup kitchens, volunteering at women's and children's shelters, all those things that get you to know not just the people in the community, but the people that are most vulnerable in the community. I think it makes you more inclined during your training and after your training to want to serve those people. As it stands right now, people who are homeless, people who are vulnerable, they're looked down upon and they're most acceptable to a lot of that violence. And so if we can address that from a training standpoint, then I think you hit the nail on the head with most of the problem. So along with clearing out people who've been, called out in violations or who've been part of violations, first and foremost, I feel like if you had any civil rights violation, number one, you need to go on a national registry. You need to be on a police registry, so that when you do lose your job, you can't go get hired somewhere else. You can't leave Snellville and go get hired, over in Athens. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are the things that we need to be addressing. These are the problems that are allowed to perpetuate. Municipalities should be backed by the federal government to cancel contract negotiations with unions. I know that will cost money. You're going to have fees and fines that you have to pay for canceling a contract, but the federal government should step in and help pay those fines. The reason for that is police unions have entirely too much power that's been negotiated through their union chief and through the city. A lot of times they wield a lot of political power, and so they use that to their advantage in forming union contracts and union deals with the city that make them sort of immune and impenetrable. And so if we are able to cancel those contracts and put regulations and minimum requirements that cities have to agree to in order to establish any kind of union contract, then you hold a little bit of a bargaining chip over those unions in terms of what they can demand and ask for. I am somebody who's very pro-union. I believe unions should exist. However, we have seen how police unions have contributed to this problem of systemic violence. So I think that is something that we need to address immediately, that we need to continue to address in the long run. And every time a loophole is found, we find a way to basically fix that in and of itself. Those are the ways that you have to do it, right? Because it's not just passing one law to say, all right, we're done. We fixed systemic violence. We fixed, we reformed all police departments. It's step by step by step. And I think that is kind of the thing that we miss when it comes to ensuring that we fix the situation at hand. Joining us here shortly is going to be Terrien Long. He is the founder of City2City, which you can find on Facebook. I'm going to take a quick break, and when I come back, he'll be here ready to go, and we're going to have a conversation about his program. All right, welcome back, y'all. We are TJ Long of City2City is going to join us actually in about 20 minutes. He's still a little tied up on his way back from work. So we're gonna go ahead and kind of jump around, and I'll jump into the next subject that I wanted to get on here. I don't know where Ron is today. I think he's been held up at work, so it's just me, and that's cool. But I do want to talk a little bit about some of these things that have come out, especially yesterday between Diddy, Charlemagne, and I think a couple of the black celebrities or Ice Cube, a couple of the black celebrities who've expressed the idea that black people need to collectively withhold our vote this fall to show the Democratic Party that they have to listen to us. And while in theory, I agree with the idea that the Democratic Party does definitely take advantage of the black vote and at times really take it for granted, I do want to point out how entirely foolish the execution of this is. Diddy, Charlemagne, Ice Cube, all these celebrities have incredible reach and a lot of money. Particularly somebody like Charlemagne has a huge platform in terms of being part of the Breakfast Club. Diddy and Ice Cube are well known nationally and internationally, within and outside of the black community. So for them to put these statements out there is incredibly dangerous and disingenuous. What do I mean by that? Okay, let's say we withhold our vote and we entrust the idea that enough white people or other people of color outside of black people do the right thing and vote Trump out of office. Okay, in that instance, we have proven that we're not really necessary in terms of the overall vote or need of the vote, because they prove that they can do it without our base turning out. Okay, let's say the opposite happens. We withhold our vote and Trump gets reelected. What are the consequences? Well, we've seen in year 4 of his presidency how much more brash he's become when he's not put in check, right? So we would have to depend on everybody to ensure that not only, if he wins the office back, that we also take Senate and the House in the process, effectively rendering him useless. That would be the only hope we have, because an unchecked Donald Trump in a second term has shown already what he would do in terms of abusing power. He has pretty much put the National Guard out there at DC. They're falling back now, but he essentially turned DC into a police state because that was the only place where he could do it. He was demanding governors be bullish with protesters. He went as far and said in a campaign rally or a rally a year or two ago to police officers that it's okay to rough suspects up a little bit. Imagine him in a second term where he doesn't have to worry about re-election. Not only that, let's talk about what he has done to antagonize the black community. Let's talk about his Secretary of Education and Betsy DeVos, who has essentially stripped away any of the protections that public schools have, stripped away a lot of the bonus funding and grant money, has done everything in her power to basically push everybody towards private schooling or charter schooling. School choice is absolute hogwash and BS. And the whole point of it is to allow essentially rich people and white people to pull their money out of school systems and put them into private schooling. Where does that leave people without access to money? Right? You can talk about vouchers all you want and everything of that nature. And you can point out, well, charter schools, they're so efficient. Well, the reason they're efficient is most of them, or the reason some of them are so efficient is most of them have sufficient funding. The reason why a lot of public schools are not efficient is because they lack the funding and they're being stuck with standardized practices in terms of education. We're not teaching students in order for them to learn and develop. We're teaching them to be able to recite facts and essentially be able to repeat information. They're not learning for the most part, with the exception of a couple schools here and there. When you have somebody that's attacking the foundation of education, when you have somebody that is essentially ensuring that the access to college is behind a paywall, by again stripping away student loan protections, stripping away actively trying to increase interest rates, all of those things add up. So when you're somebody who comes from a poor area where, again, our schools are funded by property tax largely, right? So you're coming from a poor area where you're not really getting a well-funded education, only to graduate. And because of your grades, maybe because of your lack of test scores, you're not earning the scholarship money to go to these institutions. And now you're stuck with whatever whatever the federal government gives you in terms of a Pell Grant that only covers about 60% of the average tuition. Not to mention that if you're having to stay on campus for whatever reason, if you don't have a stable home life, or if you are going, away from home because that's the best possible program for you, or if you are, need access to a meal plan. All those things add up. I think, and again, this is going back to the thesis I did, the average total cost of attendance at a university in the country is $21,000. That's tuition, that's meals, and that's housing. So when you have somebody that's actively blocking the idea of gaining access to aid and is just saying, nope, $6,000 is all we're going to give you in terms of grant money. You got to come up with the other $15,000 on your own per year. All right. Now, again, you can have access to student loans, but if the rates are significantly higher and your return is not as great because we also have a stagnant economy and poor wages, then what? Right. So again, those are the dangers of allowing them to retain office on an education side. That doesn't even get into social justice, to civil rights, all the things he's been trying to attack. He pulled Barack Obama's civil rights legislation and police reform legislation a couple months into getting into office. So at what point in time do we not look at this and say it's extremely dangerous to recommend that we withhold our vote in the effort of trying to spite the Democratic Party? You're literally chopping off your nose to spite your face, right? What is the reason why Black people are largely part of the Democratic Party? Well, after the civil rights movement, or after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, we started rioting. People were upset and angry, but Richard Nixon used the opportunity of the unrest from the assassination of Dr. King, the way that Southern whites were upset that the Democratic Party was embracing the civil rights movement. He took all of that and he ran on the idea of law and order, which is what Trump has tried to be. Nixon ran on the idea of law and order, and he got not only the Republican vote, but he got those Southern Dixiecrats to turn out votes for him too. And he won in 72. That is what is the biggest issue here. That is what is the problem. We can't sit here and say, well, if we withhold our vote, that'll show them, because it won't. And I understand that this system is bogus and we have a two-party system and it doesn't benefit anybody outside of, blah, blah, blah. And the only way that you can get a third party to get federal funding is if they get 5% of the vote. I'm sorry, it's where we are. And Diddy and them could have picked a better time to choose to do this, or to choose to get involved. You had a primary with 20-something candidates that at any point in time, you could have said, I've got a platform. Or Charlemagne could have said, I've got a platform. We can use my platform to host all 20 of y'all on issues of civil rights, on reparations, and all of that. We had several candidates in the primary who were advocating for reparations and at the very least an exploration, right? Elizabeth Warren wanted to put them in the concept of, or wrap them up with climate change, in that we are going to create new jobs and a new economy with climate change, and those jobs should be focused on Black communities who were victims of environmental racism and toxic environments, people like out there in Flint, Michigan. She had a plan for that. Tom Steyer said that we should be exploring what reparations should look like, not a matter of if we should do it, but in what form they should be paid out. Marianne Williamson went in, and I mean, she's insane, and I would not vote for her under any circumstance unless it was her versus Trump. But Marianne Williamson came out and laid out in detail why reparations were necessary. So, you had several candidates who were pushing for those things, who were wanting to enact some kind of change during the process, and you were nowhere to be found. Diddy was silent. Charlemagne was silent. Yeah, they had Kamala on the Breakfast Club, but there were all these other candidates who were talking about things like that, and you ignored them. You waited until the worst possible time to now and sow some division and say, oh, wait a minute, what if we don't? Like, what if we just don't? You didn't offer a solution. You weren't out there fighting with Stacey Abrams. You weren't out there fighting to donate to Fair Fight 2020, or at least you didn't show us that. If you're going to make that statement, you better show us what you've been doing in order to fix these problems, because otherwise you look dumb, and you got people that are pulling out all these pictures of him and Trump over the years. And it's like, again, I've said before if people are telling you not to vote or to withhold your vote, they better have a damn good reason why. And a lot of times it's going to be something that benefits them personally. Understand that if Trump is reelected, Diddy benefits financially. This tax code is here to stay if he gets elected again. So Diddy's still pulling in money. He'll be able to skirt by more things because Trump is lax on tax laws. Diddy doesn't have to worry about paying a hospital bill. He doesn't have to worry about how much it costs to put his children through school. He doesn't have to worry about those things. I do, and a lot of us do. A lot of us who aren't millionaires and billionaires do. And that's what it boils down to, is that you're speaking a different language when you got that kind of money. And that's all. That's what it boils down. He could honestly not have any malicious intent, right? He could honestly be saying this from the bottom of his heart, thinking that it is truly the right thing to say or do. But he's not. And that's the problem, is that he is saying this and it's being extremely dangerous. So that's why I feel that way about it. That's what really bugs me about his comments. And again, there's so many ways that one could get involved. I'm going to put this up on the screen here about Fair Fight 2020 because I want people to see what this is and to be aware that people like Stacey Abrams are really trying to make a difference. Let's see. Put this on here. All right. Okay. So I do want y'all to see just kind of what she's doing. Fair Fight 2020 is Stacey Abrams' initiative to, basically fight voter suppression. What she's been doing is going to different places that have shut down precincts, that have shut down, opportunities for people to be able to vote. And she is trying to challenge those laws by, in some ways, launching lawsuits against the state, against the district. Because if you look at somewhere like Milwaukee that shut down pretty much every single precinct within the city except for like one or two, that's an issue, right? Especially now that we're dealing with COVID-19. That is something that can either, all of a sudden you go from being able to go down the street to vote, being able to, go around the block, wherever the case may be, to now it's an hour drive. And then you got to wait in line because everybody from the city of Milwaukee is there, right? Like when I go out to vote, I live in Snellville, Georgia. When I go out to vote, I'll go down the road to the church. It's right outside my neighborhood. And I will take however long it takes to vote. It won't take me long. As a matter of fact, I believe it's the church that's literally right outside my neighborhood. I could walk there. I don't have to drive. My kids can stay in the house with my wife. I can walk and go vote. I can come home. My wife can walk over there and vote. It's simple, right? Snellville is also a pretty mixed city. And so they won't remove those polling sites, right? Those voting sites. But South Georgia, West Georgia, rural parts of the state, rural parts of Alabama, they've been removing it. Texas has removed over 400 over the last few years. That's a big deal. Stacey Abrams has been fighting so that, those booths, those precincts can be available for people. They can go and vote at those places because all of a sudden, for unknown reasons, they're being shut down, right? And look at who's in charge of doing that. So you want more voter suppression tactics? You want more things that prevent Black people from voting? Then go ahead and support Trump again. Go ahead and do what Diddy is saying to do by withholding your vote. If you look at what Crooked Media is doing in terms of their Adopt a State program, and I'll pull that up here in a second. That is their program for people to donate to battleground states in the 2020 election, where you can support not only not just the presidential, but you can support all the down ballot races, because that's important too. It's really important that this fall that we are looking at trying to not only get Biden's platform elected, as I mentioned before with the Castro edition, you're going to have police reform as part of that platform. Not only are we trying to get that enacted, we're trying to get control of the Senate. We're trying to get control of the House. Within your state, we need you to be fighting to ensure that we're getting proper representation. Look at what happened with Virginia. Virginia has a Democratic governor, and they now have a Democratic House and Senate. And because of that, they made the election day a statewide holiday. So people can go out and vote. They don't have to worry about working, or they don't have to worry about all the ties that come with that. So they'll be closed on that day, right? State offices will be closed. So all of those things come in handy. So it's not just the presidential election, as you all know. If you're watching something like this, you probably already have good enough knowledge about how politics works to understand the importance of it. But that's why it's so dangerous that Diddy is saying something like that, right? Withhold our vote. Because you can't then go back and say, well, we should vote for all the other candidates on the ballot and just not just the presidency, especially when Black people are largely the reason that Biden won the nomination or is going to win the nomination, right? Because he hadn't officially won it yet. But you can't have it both ways and say, all right, we'll vote on the down ballot races, but we're going to show the Democratic Party, because you're letting everything be up for grabs. And we simply can't afford it. We can't. So it's on us to combat that kind of messaging. It's on us to ensure that, we're putting the proper messaging out there about why it's important to vote, right? Because people will hear what Diddy says, what Charlemagne says, what Ice Cube says, and they respect their words and their voices. So they're going to listen, and they're going to choose not to vote. And we have to combat that at every turn. All right, quick break. When I come back, we are going to talk a little bit more about these protests that have been going on in the wake of George Floyd's murder. We're going to talk a little bit more about the conviction charges that were brought up. So stay tuned. This is a special edition of Don't Call This a Podcast, Election 2020 miniseries. We will be right back. All right, we're back. Ron, what's going on, man?
Oh, you just threw me straight into the
Yeah,
fire.
I threw
We
you straight
live.
to the fire, bro. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah. I'm back. The headphones aren't working, so I'll just go ahead and take them off. So yeah, catch me up to speed. Where are we at?
Yeah, man. I mean, really, we've done most of the show now, so we're waiting on Terrien to come in about City to City. We talked a little bit about the George Floyd protest, about police reform as Julian Castro has joined Biden's team in an effort to address police reform in his platform and in his campaign. We also talked a little bit about Diddy in terms of his we need to withhold our votes. Idiotic message that is going to cause a lot of problems here in November. But I want to know how you interpret that, how you take that messaging, especially at a time like this where we've had 8 straight days of protests. We've had people up in arms and understandably so. And now the news has dropped that not only has Derek, whatever his last name is, who cares, his charges have been upgraded from a 3rd-degree murder to a 2nd-degree murder, but the 3 other officers were also charged in the incident. How does that make you feel? What are your feelings right now? Because a lot has been happening this week. I'll let you kind of have the floor here.
Well, as far as the charges being upgraded, I know a lot of people are saying that it's a bit too ambitious. Like, will you be able to charge on 2nd-degree murder elevated from a third? And yeah, it is ambitious, but at the same time, I mean, I just feel like it's appropriate. So I definitely think it sends a clear message if the officers aren't convicted of those charges. So yeah, I mean, I think we're at a time where you can't just say like, okay, let's just get anything we can to stick them. Like, no, they need to be held accountable for their actions. So I'm totally fine with the elevation of the charges. And in fact, Keith Ellison should have been, the DNC chair, but that's a conversation for another for another time. But no, I'm totally behind Keith Ellison, deciding to elevate charges.
Yeah. Keith Ellison's role being assigned as the prosecutor of the case has been um, really a big turning point, right? And I think a lot of people, when they saw that he was taking over the case, felt a sense of relief that we might get an idea or a kernel of justice and at least getting a charge, right?
All right.
This is still not a conviction. And as I was saying earlier, I do think that people should continue to protest, to address a systemic issue. The other 3 officers have now been charged, but I think America should know, and I think the world should know that it's going to pop off again if these men don't get convicted.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you think it was bad now, imagine what happens if we look up in however long it takes for this trial to get off and they're not convicted.
Yeah, considering that we had the independent autopsy done that confirmed what we saw on camera, and it totally goes against what the city's coroner said. So if this is taken to grand jury and grand jury says, okay, there aren't any charges here. We can't take this any further. We don't see enough evidence here to convict. Yeah, you're going to be in a world of trouble. So this case has to see trial because there's so much civil unrest right now. This case has to see trial, and whatever happens there, it just happens. But to like same thing that happened, in Ferguson with Michael Floyd. Excuse me. Yeah, excuse me, boss. Yeah, you know what I meant.
Yeah.
But so the same thing that happened in Ferguson. Yeah, you don't want that to repeat because next time it's going to be worse. And so this case has to see trial. It has to go there.
All right. Well, getting ready to join us is Terrien Long of City2City. City2City is a market. I'm sorry. City2City Market is a community of demographic. Oh God, I can't even speak today. I'm sorry. City2City is a program that is designed to encourage collective action, designed to identify and address issues of public concern, including volunteerism, organizational involvement, and advocacy. Soon as he clicks in here, we'll have Terrien Long join us. He told me he's trying to click the link at this point in time. Terrien's going to talk to us about the project, how it was developed, and the role that it serves. We can always cut this awkward silence out. That's been half of the show today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've been putting on breaks and stuff and all that kind of stuff.
So what time did you actually go live?
I went live about 4:30.
Okay, 4:30 your time.
Well,
Okay.
actually, yeah, about 4:20 because I've been live for about an hour and 8 minutes. And I've talked for about 30 of them.
Just a whole bunch of just.
I just didn't know. I did a lot of black screen. Like I put the black screen up, and it was like, we'll be right back. Like I took little breaks to give myself time to breathe and get a drink of water. Matter of fact, let me drink some water real quick. He tried to do it from his phone, and he has to go to his laptop and do it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I forget. I be forgetting to clarify with y'all that I'm Eastern whenever I suggest times.
Yeah, because when I think when I said I get off at 4, you was like, okay, cool. So 3, like that's probably what happened. Like I forgot to clarify that.
Yeah, no, because you like, I get off 4. I was like, oh, okay, bet. So we do 4, and I was like, oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It's all good. I'll this live recording, I'll just make that private and just rip the video and do what I need to do with that, and then I'll just re-upload it as like one like edited episode. It's all
Yeah,
good.
I'm gonna take the audio and do the same thing.
Drew Brees a whole out here.
Boy, Beignet Brooks Bollinger.
Oh man.
Drew Brees is over party. Lord, Pokemon to put out a Black Lives Matter statement. And they donating 100,000 to the NAACP and 100,000 Black Lives Matter.
Okay. All right.
Pikachu used equality for all. It's not very effective. Phone battery dying. Boy, John Boyega out there too.
Oh yeah, he out there. Like he could not wait for that Disney contract to expire.
Could not. Oh, they're adding the second degree murder charge without taking away the third degree charge. So they're charging him for second and third.
Okay. I'm totally cool with that then.
Yep.
Okay, good.
And Aaron Rodgers may be an asshole, but at least he's got a better spot on this than Drew Brees.
Like Aaron Rodgers doesn't like his family, but he likes black people, so I'm cool with that.
Aaron Rodgers hates his family, bro.
He hates his family.
Hates him so much.
Oh, Malcolm Jenkins, I consider you a friend. I looked up to you. You're someone I had a great deal of respect for, but sometimes you just gotta shut the fuck up. Oh, okay. All right, Malcolm Jenkins.
Somebody said Michael Thomas is about to get mad and want to go catch his 600 slant passes from somebody else. Oh, Obama's speaking on MSNBC now.
Oh. I'm just still yeah, for this to be Drew Brees is like we are to think this is his last season, right? Does he just not did he just want to, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, interesting. It's not like that entire offense is pretty much the entire offense. It's not like they're black or anything.
No.
Yeah.
Sean Payton dancing because when they it ain't gonna be like the Brady Belichick argument with them. The city gonna embrace him more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He doing that iced tea, that little iced tea gift. He eating this shit.
Because I'm pretty sure Sean is just sitting back right now, like I'm not gonna say anything
at all.
I'm just not gonna say anything. It's better to just stay silent right now. Well, I try to tell them the way Breeze lit up when you saw his boo Donald Trump at the Super Bowl. I try to tell people.
What an iced tea gift. Come on now, bro. I gotta order this Instacart so we can cook. And the meal card is downstairs. There we go. All right. We're now joined by Terrien Long of City2City. Terrien, how you doing today, man? Can you hear us? Oh, we can't hear you. You probably got to adjust your microphone settings, man.
Yeah, all right, can you hear me now?
There we go.
Okay,
there we go.
There we go. Oh man, I had a whole lot of trouble. I got all of these Mac products and the website won't open on Safari, so I had to download Firefox and I had to go through the whole thing with my AirPods. But we're on here, and that's all that matters. We're here now.
Well, Terrien Long of City2City joins us. TJ, how you doing today, man?
Man, I'm doing pretty good. We got some arrest on the books for the other 3 officers. Well, charges, not arrest yet. So I'm having a good day right now.
Well, good, man. So we wanted to bring you in here to talk a little bit about City2City. It's a platform you created about a year ago now, right?
I'm probably say about 8 months. 8 months. We've been in it for about 8 months, and we're trying to target a demographic because the more I learn about politics, the more I learn that it's all about the demographics. You know, everybody wants to say black votes matters, but it only matters in certain areas. So if we're all clustered together in one area, we need to increase the voter turnout in certain areas as far as swing states, because that's what got Trump in office. And I just want to get that message out there to young black minorities, or just minorities in general, not just blacks.
So would you say that's the purpose of City2City in terms of trying to not just increase black voter turnout, but to really impact and spread news to that demographic?
Yes, the purpose of City2City is really to increase the millennial minority. So anyone from the ages of 34 to 18, we're focusing on that demographic in particular, because when people say the black vote is our parents' vote. They're the ones that's carrying the black vote. So I just wanted to make sure that millennials know that our vote holds weight too. So we need to get those people to the polls, and we can put pretty much any candidate we want in office.
So what are some of the things that you're doing in order to encourage this kind of turnout?
Right now we have a few things planned. This Saturday, I'm actually going to go door to door, try to get some of our older voters to get some absentee ballots. Well, the absentee ballot application. So it's not the actual absentee ballot. So we're going to just pass out those absentee ballot applications to our elderly people in our population so they can go ahead and get that absentee vote, because most people in my community, I'm not sure where you guys are from, but I know a lot of elderly people don't vote just because they couldn't get to the poll. So we're going to try to go get those people in those low income neighborhoods, because those are the people that more than likely don't have reliable transportation. So we're going to go ahead and attack that in the summer. So we already know we already got your absentee ballot on the books. So that's what we're doing this Saturday. When school starts back, I'm not sure how that's going to look far as in class or online, but I do want to do a voter registration drive for high school seniors that are going to be able to vote in November's election. So pretty much get all of the people that are about 18 registered to vote. I'm not going to give out any political information. I will give information for both Republican and Democratic candidates, so they'll be informed. I just want people to make an informed decision. I'm not telling people how to vote. I'm just putting the information out there. So once you get to the polls, a lot of people don't make educated decisions once they get there. Well, people in my age group really don't make those educated decisions. They just voting for people whose name sounds cool. So I just want to focus on our elderly population. When I say elderly, the people who don't have reliable transportation. And then I'm also focusing on high school seniors, because they're so new to this voting thing. They may not take it seriously. So I want to just stress the importance of it, because I honestly believe this is the most important election of our lifetime, because I think that America is going to change dramatically with this next president, whether if it's Biden or Trump. They're going to take America into that next stage. And I think it's pivotal. I know a lot of people have problems with Biden, but I also want to get that message out that Biden comes along with an administration. And you already know what the Trump administration is doing. So you have your problems with Biden. I'm not saying don't put that to the side or address it, but I also want to let young people know, because young people are the people that are watching the Breakfast Club. They've seen the interview. So those are the people that are saying, hey, I might as well stay home. No, you need to understand that Biden is coming with a new attorney general, a new Secretary of the Department of Education. He's coming with all of that. He's going to replace all of those people in there if he wins. So I just want to get the nitty gritty out to young people because they're thinking president. That's it. They're not thinking past that.
All right. What are some ways that people can participate with City to City? Where can they find the group and how can they reach you?
All right. We are primarily on Facebook right now. We have email if you want to email us, and I will reply back to your email. But right now it's a Facebook group, and you have to be invited or asked to join the group. And I made it that way in particular because I wanted your political opinion to be separate from your Facebook profile because I know jobs check your Facebook. So you have to be a part of the group to either see the content and the comments within the group. So if you're looking for us, check for us at City2City, the number 2 on Facebook. It's a group. It's not a page. It's a group. And then just ask to join. And we approve most members unless you're anti-Semitic or xenophobic, things of that nature. But we even welcome those opinions because it's not for me to tell you that your opinion is wrong. It's for you to get your opinion out there. And then I'll let the members chime in on it too. So it's not a discriminating against anyone. Not to say that we want racist and xenophobic people in our group, but I value everyone's opinion because if you're willing to join the group, I'm thinking you're going to comment. So let's see why you think that way and see if we can change it or address that. Because a lot of people just say, hey, we don't want racists in our group. I feel like I have some people who have far right views. I'm not going to call them racist, but they have far right views in my group. And we have open discussion with them. We're not going to shun them because they have a difference in political opinion. So everybody's welcome. And you can find us on Facebook, City, the number 2 City, and just ask to join the group.
All right. Now, I know you've been working, so I don't know if you were able to really be part of the protest that happened in Birmingham earlier this week. Were you able to be part of that?
Yes, I actually went to a protest Sunday. I'm working on footage. I have a live on the Facebook group. If you wanted to see some of the speakers, they had a lot of good speakers. They had people, high school seniors. They had Doug Jones, Mayor Woodfin. I mean, it was a wide range of speakers. So if you want to check that out, that's on the Facebook page as well. And I'm also editing a video so it can just be a highlight of what we saw because it was about a 2 to 3 hour protest.
Awesome. Ron, did you have anything you wanted to ask before we got out of here?
Well, personally, I just want to thank you for creating this platform because you mentioned that when people head to the polls in November, they aren't just voting for their president. They're voting for a new AG. They're voting for, Supreme Court justices. So I'm glad that you are educating people and highlighting, hey, this is what's at stake. I know you think you're just voting for this person, this personality, but no, you're voting for all of these different, basically all of these different organizations across the board. Like they have to be, these positions have to be filled. So like I said, personally, I just want to thank you for, creating this platform. And yeah, if you're watching right now, just make sure you check out City to City. And one question I did want to ask you. So if someone is outside of the immediate Birmingham area, is there, I guess, would you welcome them to the group or would you be looking to expand your platform outside of Birmingham's reach?
Yes, we have a lot of people in the Alabama area. We really don't have too many people outside of Alabama, but most of the people in the group currently have some type of ties to Alabama, even though they live in Atlanta or they live in South Carolina. We have people of all states in the group currently, but we really don't have anyone that doesn't have any direct ties to Alabama. But we're willing to welcome everyone. But once we get people from out of state, I would like for you to let me know what your views are or what you're concerned about, because I post a lot of local news. I post news for Bessemer, Birmingham, Montgomery, Mobile, and I take pride in posting the city news rather than state news. And I would want to cater that message to people that's out of town too. So I would want a little bit information about where you're from and who your city councilman members are, so I can actually get in direct contact with some of those people, because I have conversation with city councilmen too that want to get their message out. Because I don't know if you guys notice or not, but if you're in a smaller city, they don't produce the mass amount of news like AL.com. They don't have news that's curated daily. So I try to contact those city councilmen to say, hey, you got a town hall? I'll be happy to post that for you. Or, hey, if you having some type of event as far as coronavirus testing, I put a lot of coronavirus free testing that's in our area. But those are things that won't make it to AL.com, but they still need to get out to the masses. So if you're joining from another state, we welcome that, but I would want additional information so we can tailor our content so it can be valuable to you as well.
Terrien Long of City2City, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate it. Keep up the great work, and we'll have to have you back another time.
All right. And if you are interested in City2City, just search us, City, the number 2 City on Facebook, and ask to join the group.
All right, TJ, have a good day, man.
All right, you do the same. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks.
All right. So, Ron, that's pretty much our show today, man.
I had to come in late, change out the work clothes, but glad to be here. But yeah, man, it's crazy times, man. It's TJ highlighted. The next president will change the course of the country. So just keep that in mind. Like, keep that in mind that we could either basically stop the path of fascism right now, because let's not, sugarcoat it. That's where we're heading. Or, if we could just jump into it, feet first. So it's up to you to decide. And that's where we're at with it.
All right. Well, we'll catch y'all next Wednesday, same time, roughly. Keep a lookout on the Twitter account and on the website, kidswearcrowns.com, at the KWC blog on Twitter. Make sure you follow me on my new account on Twitter at Rhine, RHINE KWC. Since Twitter still won't tell me what happened to Eagle Eye. But we're out of here. See y'all next week. Have a good one.